Hey, Summit Lake 7th graders, we are going to show you, as your social studies teachers, how to do this interview. First, make sure you fill this part out, and then find somebody to interview.
Would you mind stating your name?
Yes, my name is Reza.
Where were you when you first heard about the 9/11 attacks?
I was in my sophomore English class, and a student was sent to the office because he was joking around, and when he came back, he told us that the World Trade Center towers had been attacked, and we all were like, no way, and we didn't believe him.
Okay, great.
What were your initial reactions?
Initially, I thought it must have been like an accident, that like something happened to the pilot. And then my next reaction, once we realized that it was an attack, was hoping that it was, and this is gonna sound bad, but hoping that it was an American that had attacked. I was hoping that it wasn't somebody from the Middle East, since we had just had some attacks that were similar.
Cool. How did the news or TV cover the attacks? And what were your reactions when you saw those television coverage?
Okay. So first of all, by the time I got to fourth hour, so second hour is when we found out about the attacks. By the time I got to fourth hour, all of our teachers all had TVs that were carted down to the rooms, and the news was on from the get-go. So the TV coverage was obviously that the announcers had no idea, really the talking heads really didn't know what was going on. And then also for us, it was the shock of seeing people's reactions. It looked like a war zone. Of course, the really tragic scenes of people jumping from the buildings. And then following that, those 2 or 3 weeks where it was just nothing but news, when regular TV wasn't a part of the world anymore. During those weeks, we started noticing that as it came out that it was Middle Easterners, and as it came out that it was extremists, Muslim extremists, the coverage started to become a little bit more focused on how do we get back at these people, and then also how we put our nation back together as we were attacked on our soil for the first time in a long time.
How did the 9/11 attacks impact your life?
The 9/11 attacks impacted my life pretty directly. The day that the attacks happened, it was pretty much, Osama bin Laden came out pretty much right away and said that he was the one that did the attacks or could take credit for them. My dad, who's from Iran, so Middle Easterner, came home with like a bunch of American flags to post around in our rooms, in our windows, and then in our cars, so that everyone would know that we were American citizens. And then religiously being raised Muslim, that was a huge impact, because I went from being that kid in my high school with the weird name to being the Muslim Middle Eastern girl. And so within school I didn't have too many issues. My friends knew me, but there were more like joke comments that were made about being a terrorist or knowing the terrorist attacks. The direct impact though that was made on my family comes from my brother. My brother was on radio at that point in time, and was very public about being a Middle Easterner and about being a Muslim, and we started getting threats. So we started getting death threats. People would threaten my life when they would call in. There's only one of us with our last name in the entire country, so there's really easy to find us. And so we were getting pretty much for, I would say, the first 2 or 3 weeks after the attacks, we would get phone calls nonstop and threatening messages and a lot of name calling. And then on the news, there were a lot of people that were reacting and would say things like, these people should all be put into like camps and everything, kind of like what we did to the Japanese after Pearl Harbor.
How has the USA changed in reaction to the attacks in 9/11?
So a lot of the stuff that we see commonly is like airport security, and then of course we see the access that the government has to our own records. So if you even buy a house, they can scan your records. If you are text messaging, phones, all of those different Patriot Act laws that were passed that take away a little bit of our liberties for the protection of the nation. And then also I would say a huge impact that's been kind of negative on our country is this Islamophobia that's spread across, where people now only associate this religion with terrorism instead of associating the terrorists just as extremists, not necessarily related to their religion. And I would say those are the biggest impacts. And then of course, you can't forget about the 2 wars that we fought in Iraq and Afghanistan that are somewhat connected to the attacks and how that's impacted our nation.
Don't forget to thank the person, whoever you interviewed, and also get their signature on the bottom part. All right.
You should have seen the